Good afternoon and welcome to all the brave souls who have braved the great storm of 23. To the Rotary Club of York, the 26th largest Rotary Club in the world and a club dedicated to imagining and living out the Rotary mission of service above self. I'm Glenn Miller, the club president. Our opening song today, the Star-Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance, will be led by President-elect Aaron Jacobs. Our invocation will be led by Steve Feldman, and our visitors and visiting Rotarians will be introduced by Wilda Alessi. Please take a moment to silence your electronic devices.
Thank you, President Glenn. Rotarians, please join me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a word of prayer. O Lord God, creator of the universe, we come before you today engaged in the never-ending struggle to remain grateful. In the face of loss, trouble, uncertainty, and resentment, and painfully aware of conflict, poverty, and injustice, it is often hard to see the good in our lives and in our world. Yet gratitude, even if just for love, for life, for friends and family, for pleasant memories and the hope of a better future, offers us both hope and motivation to serve others. Gratitude is in some ways why we are Rotarians. We are particularly grateful for our speaker today. Bless her with wisdom, discernment, warmth for her fellow citizens, and gratitude to protect her from cynicism. Help us to remember to be grateful to those who have prepared and served our meal today, and help us to respond to our gratitude with a desire to place service above self in keeping with the values of our club. Amen.
Good afternoon. I am pleased to have the honor of introducing our guests for today's meeting. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing until President Glenn has welcomed you. Brian Caden, guest of Doug Berman. Amanda Harden, guest of Eric Chase. Felicia Dell, guest of Julie Wheeler. Cora Taylor, guest of Andy Rawitz. And I think that's it.
Friends, we are grateful to have you here with us today. I know that you will enjoy our program as well as the fellowship of our lively and diverse members who surround you. I hope you will return to us to visit again in the future and perhaps even consider joining our ranks. Rotarians, please help me welcome our visitors. You may be seated. I have to begin our announcements today by acknowledging several a multitude actually of very sad pieces of news that affect our club and its members. First, the sympathy of the club is extended to Jenny Goodling at the recent death of her brother Todd, to Andy Rawitz and his family at the recent death of his son Michael, to Amy Anstein at the recent death of her mother Jean, and to Dr. Ben Hoover at the recent death of his younger brother, the Reverend Dr. Robert Hoover. And finally, to the Kinsley family at the devastating news that we are all trying to take in of the tragic deaths of brothers John and Tim Kinsley. It's nearly impossible to imagine the grief that their families are experiencing at this moment. As everyone in this room knows, the positive impact of the Kinsley family on this community is also almost impossible to fully describe. John and Tim, like their father before them and their whole family, have been living embodiments of the Rotary motto of service above self. Seems to me that in a community like ours, we feel more deeply and more personally, perhaps, the pain and the suffering of others in our midst. It is the painful side of what is otherwise a joyful and blessed thing to be a part of such a community. I would ask for a moment of silence for us to lift up in our own hearts and within our own faith traditions as they lead us, Andy, Jenny, Amy, Ben, and the entire Kinsley family. Would you rise for that moment? Thank you. Other announcements for the good of the order. The nominating committee will meet today at CCY immediately following this meeting in the terrace room. The communications committee will meet on January 31st at 3:30 at the Regent's Grill the Grill at Regent's Glen. Next week, as we've previously noted, CCY will be closed, so we have moved our meeting on February 1st off-site to Penn State, York. Lunch will be served in the conference center at the main classroom building, and the program will take place in the Holy Hall in the Graham Center, adjacent buildings, just a short walk from the building next to it. You must register to attend this event by January 25th, and if you haven't looked at your calendar recently, that's today. You may do so by using the QR code provided at your table. However, please note that you have to turn off your Wi-Fi on your phone and use the cellular service in order to use the QR code. If your eyes have already glazed over at that instruction, feel free to say something to Lynn after the meeting and we'll get you registered. You are also invited to join the fellowship committee for happy hour tomorrow, the 26th, at Gear House Brewing Company Archetype Pizza, located at 33 West Market Street from 5 to 7 p.m. Next Thursday, February the 2nd, I will be celebrity bartending from 6 to 8 p.m. at Aviano's Corner Trattoria on Duke Street in downtown York. Proceeds from both the tips collected and the signature drink of the evening, which I have chosen, a twist on a traditional old-fashioned, if you're interested, will go to support the community project fund of our Rotary Charitable Endowment Fund. It's a great opportunity to support a local business and, of course, a great cause. I had the pleasure of being down there to observe how this works last Thursday. If you've not been to Aviano's, it's a great place, and it was a lively evening. Wilda was there with me, I believe. So please come out next Thursday. And if you would please let Rob Bowen know If you think that you're going to come, it's not necessary to have reservations, but we do like to have an idea of numbers for these fellowship events. Next up, we will hear from Andy Siebold on behalf of the Global Grants Committee, who is bringing some exciting news about the committee's most recent undertaking. Andy.
Good afternoon. Really excited to share with you an opportunity that us as a club are bringing forward to raise money for a much needed cause. So we talked before, even during in prayer, we talked about gratitude. And so often we take so many things for granted. And I'd like you to think about the slide that's here when we talk about imagine. Imagine the difference in each of us, how each of us make in the lives of one another, and how we make in the lives of the people throughout our communities and throughout the world in the way in which we give and donate. Now, I want to shift your attention. Think about the word imagine and think about how much we take for granted that we could step up, whether it's here or at home or at work, and find a bathroom, right? Sometimes we do our best thinking in the bathroom and best ideas come from the bathroom, right? But imagine a world where you don't have access to a bathroom, right? That gets really personal. And so I want to share with you a journey that it's very personal to me and my heart. I've been going to Sandafa, Ethiopia for a couple years now. Matter of fact, our church, Living Word Community Church, has been going for 16 years, providing medical care for a village in Sandafa, Ethiopia that has very limited to no access to healthcare. Less than 50% of the people in that community have no access to a bathroom, period. That's over 25,000 people in the community that live there. Half of them have no access to a toilet. So think about, again, the things that we take for granted and the impact that we could have as a group to raise funds. And that's what our Global Grants Committee is going to do. So if I could have everybody that's in the Global Grants Committee stand, if you would. And the reason for this is we're doing a lot of work right now. And I know there's quite a number of people online. Jane Conover's leading our group and doing a tremendous job. Our goal, quite honestly, is to raise $70,000 to build toilets in Sandafa, Ethiopia. So the individuals that are standing, make sure to ask questions of them, not only today, but the next couple of weeks, we'll have a table to answer questions about this. Thank you. Appreciate you serving. So again, we have the ability to impact lives that are in need. We have the ability to develop relationships. And the great thing is we have a long-standing relationship with the people in Sandafa to carry out this work for us, as well as the Rotary Club there, which I visited about 3 years ago. So a little bit more about Sandafa. Again, 25,000 people that live in this community. It's one of the poorest of poorest areas in the country. And I'll show you some slides that just kind of take your breath away to say, wow, the things, again, that we take for granted that they're living to survive every day. Again, typically making less than $2 a day on average. So the really cool thing about this is we do have relationships. So the individuals on the left-hand side, those are Rotary Club members in Addis Ababa, which is the capital of Ethiopia. We've had multiple conversations with Hinak, who's on the left-hand side, who's leading that group's effort as well as the country's effort in Ethiopia for Rotary. And he has experience actually in building bathrooms, toilets. On the right-hand side, those are 5 individual leaders within Sandafa who literally donate their time every day providing medical care in Sandafa. And again, it's hard pressed to find somebody that's as giving and a servant leader as the individuals on that screen. So again, the gentleman on the right-hand side, Dr. Freu, he's a primary care physician, again, literally donating his time. Actually, we as Living Word provide funding for he and the other 4 members of the team to provide the free medical care in Sandafa. Here's just another picture on the right. This is a family. On the left is where they live. And literally, it's a square home. As you can see, literally, they're cooking in the home and their belongings are what's in that room. They have very little And again, no access to restrooms. So again, what's our goal? Our goal is to raise $70,000 towards this. It will actually be building about 16 toilets to serve over 6,000 people within this community. And you may say, well, what's the sustainability plan once we build these toilets? And all that has been thought through. We've actually built the toilet that is on the right-hand side through Living Word, and it is sustained and maintained and continues to be clean and available for people. And there's so much good, as you can imagine, the health issues that exist because lack of proper sanitation within that community. This building will actually be built from plastic bottles. So you think about the pollution that exists. It's actually using plastic bottles with cement and building the walls that are there. So the awesome part of this is our goal is to raise at least $6,000 from all of us here in this room. If you think about it, if every one of us contributed $50 right now, that would surpass that goal. And the other awesome part of this is Living Word has donated $5,000, and we've had one individual within our committee that's also donated $1,000. So we'll do a dollar for dollar match up to $6,000 for everybody who contributes to this cause. And then that, in combination with matching gifts from the district and the global grant, we'll be able to raise the funds that are needed to support this project. So again, $1 generated from you equates to about a $2.80 contribution to this project. So I hope we're all in on this, right? Think about the difference we can make. So on your table, don't use the Rotary, don't use the country club's Wi-Fi, I hear, but you can scan this code and you can go to the Rotary Club, yorkrotary.org website. You can literally link and click on the other fund and donate directly to this project. The reason why we want you to go that route is because those funds get matched by district and global grants. Not advancing. So again, what to do next? Just, you can donate in several different ways. One, use the QR code. Second, you can make a check payable to Rotary Club of York Charitable Endowment Fund. It's important that Charitable Endowment Fund is part of that name so that those funds get matched. Okay, and we'll be available today and the next couple meetings to answer questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks to the great work of the committee. This has been a very well thought out plan and is going to bear some wonderful fruit. And now, Chris Topp has a presentation for us on recruitment. Chris.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. I feel it's my duty as a member of the media and part of the world-class journalism team at Fox 43 to let you know that what you're about to hear from me contains things that are abjectly false, some things that are true, and some things that I'm going to make up as I'm up here talking about them. So you decide which is which. Towards the end of last year, we had our drive for 300 to get back to 300 members. We've come dangerously close to that a few times. One of the things that we started at the beginning of this new Rotary year was talking about how we can get new members to join us. One of the things that came up was, why don't we put together a video that shows all of the talented and amazing people that we have in our club? So when we decided to do this at the beginning of October, we sent out a call to people to see who would like to be a part of a video and show off their talents and be a part of something that's going to be broadcast out to a lot of different places, which I'll get into in a little bit. At that point, President Glenn and President-elect Aaron were debating over when we should be releasing this. Aaron wanted this closer to May and June so the 300 could happen during his presidency. President Glenn was adamant and I believe threatened a lawsuit or two. Like I said, not all of this is true. I'm just going from memory. If we did it too far close to Aaron's ear. So we did get an independent person to come in and negotiate this whole thing. And we are going to be doing our world premiere of that today. What I would like to do is I would like to thank the 23 Rotarians that did take part in putting together the video. I'm going to let you know that not all 23 are in this cut of it. We are going to make 4 or 5 different cuts of it, but I wanted to make sure the first one went over well with all of you, so we don't have to change 5 of them. We might only have to change 1. The good news about that is with the 23 that did respond that they wanted to help us out, it really did help us from having to tell about 270 of you that you were undesirable and we didn't want you in the video anyway. So I appreciate your lack of participation on that front. And with that being said, Lindsay, you want to show them what we've got?
I am helping my community.
I am networking for my business.
I'm making new friendships.
I am giving back.
We live service above self.
We make a difference.
We are people like you.
We are the Rotary Club of York.
We make things happen.
So there we go. We're going to have 4 or 5 different versions of that. Part of the negotiation was not to have Glenn in the world premiere one, but to have Aaron in it. So we've checked off that box. But you will be seeing that our communications committee has dollars set aside to make that part of some of the Facebook posts that we have, and we're going to boost those and get those out to advertise to people. On top of that, that spot will also be seen on Fox 43 on a fairly regular basis over the coming months as part of our overall recruitment effort. So tune in every day. Just for 9 hours a day is all I ask to Fox 43. To see where that spot does land. So thank you very much.
Getting that out in the middle of my presidency was well worth the sacrifice of not being in the first cut. So very grateful for that and very grateful for this communications team. You know, I know many of us in this room remember that the days when our recruitment program was to stand back and watch them come in, and that's not the case any longer. We need to be proactive, and this committee has just done an outstanding job over the last couple of years of taking this seriously, leading up to the kind of effort that you've seen here today. So many thanks, Chris, to you and to the team, and I know the second or third cut will be even better. And now we have an update from the Legacy Committee from once again Steve Feldman. Steve.
Here I am, back in spite of popular demand. The Legacy Committee has the purpose of encouraging Rotarians to support the work of the Rotary Club of York through planned giving, either during your lifetime or through your estate planning. Legacy giving is intended to make your mark on those charitable and service activities of the club that you have supported during your life. There are many approaches to leaving a legacy gift to the York Rotary Charitable Endowment Fund, but they break down into 2 strategic categories. You can leave a general gift to the CEF, which will support the annual grant-making capacity of the fund, or you can create a named fund with a gift of $25,000 or more to generate an annual income to the CEF, either for its general purposes or to support the project areas or committee activities to which you are devoted. For example, what if you are a dedicated tree planter for the Preserving Planet Earth Committee? Yeah. President, thank you very much. Your named fund would help the PPE committee plant more trees or engage in other important work like saving Kiwanis Lake. What if you pick up a rake and clean up Rotary Field for York Little League? You could create a fund that provides funding for this longtime Rotary youth program in the city of York. What if you care deeply about helping veterans or single moms get the education they need to get ahead? A contribution to the non-traditional scholarship fund would enhance the scholarship committee's ability to do just that. What if you have an idea of your own? Come and talk to club membership or the legacy committee, and let's see what we can do. Members of the committee and club leadership will be speaking to you briefly over the next several months with examples of how Rotarians have used the CEF and other planned gifts to further their community and charitable interests. Use these brief talks to get your own thinking started. Take some time and answer this question. How might I leave my mark on the Rotary projects and community actions I care for and love? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think we all know week after week, particularly when we're awarding scholarships, but not limited to scholarships, that much of what we do comes directly through those kind of planned gifts that others who came before us have made. We stand on their shoulders in many respects. Many of you in the room have followed suit, I know, over these past number of years in making those gifts. And so thank you, Steve, and to the work of the committee for continuing to lift that up for us. And now, with no further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our program committee chair and past president, Mike Summers, who will introduce our speaker for today. Mike.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our speaker today will be Julie Wheeler, who is president of the York County Commissioners. Julie was first elected in 2019, and as the commissioner with the largest vote total, was also elected president. Julie is a seasoned Fortune 100 business leader. She has more than 30 years of leadership experience in industry and medical business selections. Prior to her role as president commissioner, she was a general manager of the medical device business at General Electric. Julie has extensive experience in strategic planning, business development, and operational leadership, and she has experience leading both domestic, global business, as she also lived in Hong Kong and Japan. Julie supports her local Red Lion community as a member of the BPO Elks 1592, and she's a member of the Women's Giving Circle as an active member of the Women's Business Center organization. Julie chairs the Stepped Up Initiative, is a York County Economic Alliance board member, and is active in many other community leadership organizations. In 2021, she was honored as Community Impact Award from Bro to Go and the York County Economic Alliance as an elected official of the year. She was recognized in 2017 for the Central Pennsylvania Business Journal Women of Influence and Community Achievement. She also was elected to the state by the county commissioners to be the treasurer from a bipartisan group. President Commissioner and fellow Rotarian Julie Wheeler will provide us with an update on county government. Rotarians and guests, please warmly welcome Julie Wheeler.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming out in the snow today. All set? Okay, it's great to be here today. I'm going to talk about a bunch of topics I just pick ad hoc. At the end, Mike is going to keep me on track to allow some times for questions. You can certainly ask any question related to this or any other topic. And unlike the gentleman from Fox 43, what I will tell you today is the truth to the best of my ability. So, with that, today we're going to cover a little bit about strategic plan, the budget, conservation district, some childcare funding that the county was on the forefront, putting out in the community. Talk a little bit about the opioid settlement that took place last year and the funding that is coming to York County government. Talk a little bit about broadband, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And it's unfortunate that my cohort, Silas Chamberlain, couldn't be here today to be a part of that, but he's somewhere in Harrisburg. I want to talk about a program I'm really, really excited about that I championed for our firefighters, a tax rebate program that we launched this year. And then just briefly about America 250 PA. So with that, I am on to talk a little bit about the strategic plan. I know this is hard to see. One of the things that we embarked on in 2021 was doing a strategic plan for the county. You're all business leaders here in the room, and I can't imagine that one of you doesn't have a business plan or strategic plan to run your business. And it was about time that the county had a plan accordingly. So 2021 was spent doing a strategic plan. We have 5 strategic anchors. They're outlined there down the left of the side. In addition, the county now has a mission, a vision, a purpose, and core values, in addition to the 9 guiding principles that are on the right side of the page. Those are guiding principles by which we say we're going to conduct ourselves internally as an organization and externally with the 450,000 people that live here in York County. So I'm really thrilled that we've completed that. That was kind of step 1. Step 2, we are now working to operationalize that across York County government. And I'm pleased to say that all of the directors, you'll see in the next slide, have goals tied to those strategic anchors. I have 2 of my colleagues here today, fellow Rotarians, Brian Tate and Dan Burns, who are my peers as row officers. They've operationalized the strategic plan within their organizations. So really, really excited that we have now a direction on where we're going to go with York County government. One of the things that we did to operationalize the strategic plan was form a Building a Better York Engagement Committee. These are people that raised their hand, they self-selected, they're county government employees who said, I want to be a part of this. I want to make York County government a better place, and I want to serve my community and strengthen the quality of life for the people that we serve. So we have an engagement committee. My guest today, Felicia Dell from the Planning Commission, is my partner in crime with this. She actually leads the engagement committee on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. We meet monthly. They talk about all kinds of things. I just wanted to share a few things that we're doing around 3 of our strategic anchors. First one, regarding outreach, education, and engagement. So we're spending a lot of time looking at how do we brand ourselves and what is our messaging. I think there's a lot of people that don't have a clear understanding of the breadth and scope of what county government does. We have over 50 departments ranging from 911 to emergency management. We oversee the prison. We oversee social service programs like children, youth, and families, drug and alcohol. The list goes on and on and on. So doing a bit around messaging and branding, and also doing some work around getting a new logo that really represents our vision of a unified community. We've updated the county newsletter. We started an employee newsletter in 2020. We've now revamped that to be a little more engaging with our employees, to let them know the great things that are going on outside of their departments. We have, as I mentioned earlier, department level goal setting, and we are working this year to do a better job of proactively communicating with the community on the things that we're doing and what we have to offer. No disrespect to the friend from Fox 43, but a lot of times the media wants to draw attention to the negative things that are going on. There's a lot of positive things that are going on in York County government, and it's incumbent upon us to get that information out to you all. People, certainly a big part, whether that's internally or externally. We've embraced the initiative led by the York County Economic Alliance on creating a welcoming workplace. We welcome everyone at York County government. At the end of spring and at the end of fall, we're going to actually have some wellness events for our employees to get them out of the office, engage, promote some camaraderie within the departments. Last but not least, one that's near and dear to my heart is fiscal responsibility. I think as a county commissioner, we wear 2 caps. We have a fiscal responsibility to each and every person in here as a taxpayer, but then we also have a responsibility to provide the appropriate programs and services to our residents. In regards to fiscal responsibility, a focus makes sense to probably everyone in here, decreasing expenses and increasing revenue. Unfortunately, the county doesn't have a lot of products and services that we sell, so we don't have many revenue generating levers that we can pull. I am going to talk about one in a little bit that we've created through broadband, but really hunkering down and looking at ways we can decrease costs and increase revenue. I'm happy to say that last year we set a goal of decreasing expenses across the county by 2%. And I know that might not seem like a lot to folks in here, but it is a lot when you're talking about we already run pretty lean and slim. 28 of the departments that are funded out of our general fund, 50% of those, we reduce expenses by 2%. So it's pretty significant, and I'm really excited to share that with you. So we're going to be continuing to focus on areas where we can decrease expenses and increase revenue. I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight my colleague, Dan Burns from Clerk of Courts. He's been a great partner with me and looking at ways we can improve revenue through the Clerk of Courts department. One of the things that we proactively worked on, there he is, Dan, is something around the bear forfeiture fund. And Dan can talk about that in a little more detail, but it's great to have a partner who's got the same business mindset and looking for ways that we can increase revenue into the county. And this year will be a big focus around educating our employees around fiscal responsibility, in particular, what the county incurs from a cost perspective when it comes to benefits, whether that be healthcare or the pension, because they all come at a cost that we're all contributing to as taxpayers. So really making sure that our county employees are aware of what it means to be fiscally responsible. The last slide I have in regards to the strategic plan, 76% of the workforce at the county is in a bargaining unit. So 1,400 out of the 2,200 employees are in a bargaining unit. That leaves, roughly, my math is 800 employees around non-bargaining units. What we've done this year in order to operationalize the strategic plan one level down is every single director in York County government that is a non-bargaining employee has set 3 goals tied to those 5 strategic anchors I talked about earlier. Their compensation next year will be totally merit-based, based on their ability to meet the 3 goals, which they've set up that they're going to achieve. We've given an opportunity to those directors to go a little bit above and beyond as an incentive. If they set 5 goals and achieve all 5 goals, there will be an additional amount of money allocated to them. So I think this is great. I'm sure most of you all reward your employees in business based on merit, and the county is moving towards doing that for all of our non-bargaining employees. I want to talk a little bit about the budget. You all probably know that we did pass the budget at the end of last year. We did use some ARPA funding to close the deficit, so we did not raise county taxes here in 2023. I do want to give a little bit of perspective on the budget and what goes into that. So our budget for this year is just shy of $700 million. We do have part of that budget that comes from, excuse me, special revenue and fiduciary funds. So these would be funds, for example, that come through the state or the federal government for those programs that are mandated by the county to deploy. However, with many of the mandates that we don't get complete funding. So we've got to close that gap somewhere. And that gap we close from money from our general fund. So this year we had a gap of $22 million short from our state and federal funding sources and had to use our money from our general fund to close that. I think we all know the housing new growth market has been flat. That's where we get our county tax revenue from. Costs and fines, I mentioned earlier, in Dan's department, the Clerk of Courts. They generate around $20 million into the county, and we're very grateful for that. However, I want to make sure everyone is aware, because I found that most folks in the public aren't aware that the county is responsible for operating the judicial system. Our wonderful judges and MDJs are paid by the state for their salaries, but everything else related to that, those expenses are incurred by the county. So the building, the laptops, the phones, the clerks, all of that has to come from county funding. So we get $20 million in revenue from that system, but close to $65 million it costs the county to operate that system. So I just would like to give you a perspective on what we have to do to try to balance our budget, given that we kind of already start out behind the 8 ball, $22 million short in the mandated programs, and $65 million we've got to cover to run our judicial system. So I think it was a great accomplishment by the Board of Commissioners, our CFO, and others that we closed that gap and did not have to raise taxes this year. I want to talk a little bit about the Conservation District. I sit on that board, and I know when Susan Burns asked me to take her place on that board, I thought, oh my heavens, what do I have to offer? But it's my favorite board that I sit on, I have to say. My fellow board members call me the farmer in training. I will tell you, I've learned more about manure lagoons and all of those types of things I never heard of before. But one of my passions in getting on this board, I've heard a lot from especially our builders in the community, is how do we get an expedited and streamlined permitting process when it comes to stormwater management. And when I first approached the board with this, they looked at me like I had 5 heads. And I felt strongly that we should be able to preserve land, conserve land, but also develop land, that those two things can exist at the same time if it's done properly. So it took 2 years, but I am really excited to share with you that we now have a streamlined permitting process when it comes to stormwater management. So very excited about that. For you builders in the room, hopefully you'll be pleased with that. We did that by a couple things. One, we had to work with our friends up at the state, DEP. That was no easy feat, getting them on board with this program. In addition, we hired a full-time engineer. That was a position that had been open for a very, very long time. So we were proactive and looking for someone that could fill that spot. But one of the things that this does for us, again, from an efficiency standpoint, we no longer have to send the plans up to DEP to get approved. We can actually approve those right here. We spent 5 projects working alongside with DEP and the engineer to make sure we knew what we were doing, passed with flying colors. So now we can do all of that work here, again, saving time and money and driving efficiencies in the permitting process. The other thing I wanted to spend a little bit of time on, I know fellow Rotarian Tony Campisi is not here, but I've got to give a shout out to Tony Campisi and Pete Brubaker. They advocated with the county pretty hard to partner on what can we do to help our community as it relates to childcare. I think we all can attest that early childhood development is very important, right, Brian? So York County was once again leading the way. In 2022, we created a program working with childcare consultants to provide funding for our childcare educators. So the county put in $250,000 from our ARPA funding, and we actually just doubled down on that at the end of last year. So we've now given $500,000 to this early educator childcare program. I also want to be respectful to our philanthropic colleagues. Many thanks to the Brocker Foundation, the Wareham Foundation, the Powder Mill Foundation, and the York County Community Foundation, because they signed on with the county with their checkbook to also help fund this early educator award program. The programs deployed approximately $460,000 to support 63 childcare centers, and over 4,000 children have been impacted by this. So we were thrilled to be able to do this for our childcare facilities here in York County. How am I on time? Okay. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about Yoko Fiber. Speaking of internet and cell phones and all of those things, if you think back to 2020, when we were at the height of COVID, Kevin and I had conversations on what are we going to do to recover from this COVID pandemic economically. So we formed a group, a task force comprised of some folks in this room, community leaders from different demographics, whether it was the hospitality industry, tourism industry, childcare. Convened these folks together. They came back with a report on some of the things that we needed to do to help recover economically from the pandemic. One resounding theme across all of those community stakeholders was that we need to do something to close the digital divide in our community. So whether it's related to telehealth, remote work, remote learning, or just plain surfing the internet at an affordable price for residents. Hence, we formed Yoko Fiber. So in 2020, we used some CARES funding. Just like I mentioned earlier with the strategic plan, we needed to have a plan. So what was the plan going to be to close the digital divide in the 911 square miles here in York County? So we hired a consultant who did a feasibility study. That's now basically become the playbook for us to close the digital divide here in York County. So that was completed. And then in 2021, we formed a task force. As I mentioned earlier, Silas Chamberlain leads that task force. It's comprised of various community stakeholders. Our healthcare providers are represented on there, both WellSpan and UPMC, our county engineer, John Kleindens, fellow Rotarian. They meet approximately once a month to talk about the things that we need to continue to do to close the digital divide in our community. And then about June of 2021, the commissioners said we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we allocated $25 million of rescue funding towards closing the digital divide in this community. There's 3 projects that are linked to that $25 million. One is a project running dark fiber down the Heritage Rail Trail and taking fiber from 4 boroughs down the rail trail and getting fiber to the premise. So that's what we're calling our last mile project, our middle mile project, and then a project to not only provide accessible but affordable internet in our urban areas. So York City, West York, and the Hanover area. If you remember, Silas and I had chatted with you all about a year ago about the pilot project we did. As most of you know, the county owns the Heritage Rail Trail, and a lot of foresight by individuals before me who had the brains to run conduit underneath the rail trail. Conduit was in great shape, so we ran 16 miles of dark fiber under the rail trail from Kings Mill down to Railroad. So those 16 miles is now an asset that the county has. That was completed, say mid-2021. So what we did last year is we put out an RFP to internet service providers to see if anyone would have an interest in running fiber from our dark fiber to the homes. Sure enough, we had 5 people that responded to the RFP. We hired Lit Communities. I'm pleased to say that we've now finished our contract negotiations with them to take fiber from the 4 boroughs, 7 Valleys, Glen Rock, New Freedom, and Railroad to them. We will probably take us around 18 months to complete the project. Construction is going to start early in second quarter of this year. The great thing for us is one of the 2 elements of the proposal that was very attractive to the county commissioners was, one, they were going to bring some private equity funding to the tune of $8 million. So this will cost the county $0. In addition, they understood our commitment to support local businesses. And so they are going to be working with Henkels and McCoy and Catapult Engineering, both businesses in York County. So we're really, really thrilled about the opportunity to work with Lit Communities. In addition, this will serve roughly 3,000 potential residents in York County. Each home that signs up for internet service through this, the county will get a piece of revenue of that. So great little revenue generating opportunity for the county. Are we going to make billions of dollars? No, but we're going to make enough money to cover the ongoing maintenance and expenses of the dark fiber down the Heritage Rail Trail. I want to talk a little bit about our middle mile project. So I mentioned earlier about the business plan that we put together on what is it going to take to close the digital divide in our community. A big chunk of that is tied to building out 7 rings of the middle mile. So second project we're working on is to build out 144 miles of dark fiber in 3 rings, rings 4, 5, and 6. One of the reasons we picked those is between rings 4 and 5, they're connected by that 16 miles of dark fiber I talked about earlier. So we've already started the connection. So this project will link all 3 of those rings together, virtually covering the entire southern part of York County. As with the last mile project, we did an RFP, had several folks respond, and we happened to select Lit Communities, who was the vendor we selected for the last mile project. This will put in 144 miles of dark fiber here in the southern part of York County. And right now we are in the contract phase with Lit Community. So once this project is completed, then what we will do is do another last mile project and put an RFP out for internet service providers who want to take fiber from this middle mile to the home. And then the last project I wanted to mention, just as important, is how do we provide not only accessible internet, but affordable internet to our urban communities. We completed the engineering work through Business Information Group, another local business, on what it would take with combination mostly of Wi-Fi antennas, not much dark fiber, because as you know, running dark fiber in a city under streets and roads becomes very costly. So the engineering schematics, the program is done. We used around $400,000 of ARPA funding to do this. Now what we're doing in conjunction with Kevin and the Economic Alliance is working to get the operational costs to have this up and running for roughly 3 years. It'll cost around $600,000 to run this from an operations standpoint. As I mentioned earlier, the county has allocated $25 million to closing the digital divide. $5 million of that will be to actually put this network in place. So the county is adding up the money to do that, and now out looking for how we can fund the operational costs. And the last thing, last two things I wanted to talk about. For those of you that aren't aware, we have 44 volunteer fire organizations in our community, and they are really struggling to get volunteers. And I think a lot of us probably take for granted when we call 911, if we have a fire, that the fire engine is going to show up and put the fire up at our house. We've seen a dramatic decline in volunteers. So one of the things the county has done is we developed a tax rebate program. We were permitted to do that through some legislation that was passed in 2020. So we launched it this year. And what this will allow is folks that volunteer at our fire companies to earn points based on a scale that we developed with the Fire Chiefs Association. And they have an opportunity to earn up to a 50% tax rebate back on their county taxes. Our goal is to have this be 100% reimbursable, but given this is year one, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. But I think this is a great way for us to thank those folks who put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. So I'm really thrilled that we have launched this program. It is applicable to both active members as well as those members who have may have been injured in the line of duty. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about the opioid settlement. For those of you that aren't aware, the county, along with some other counties a few years ago, was on the forefront of litigation with some of the opioid drug manufacturers and distributors. There was a settlement that took place last year between the counties across the nation and these drug companies. What that means for us in this nationwide settlement is York County over the next 18 years will be in receipt of $21 million to be used for opioid abatement programs, facilities in our community here. It's a great deal of money that we're going to be getting here right here in our community. We've already received the first payment of the settlement funds, and the second payment is due over the next couple months. So much like how we did with the Marcellus Shale funding, with CARES and ARPA funding, is put a process in place by which we can allocate this money fair and equitably out in our community. And so I just want to share a little bit about that today so you can spread the word with your colleagues that this money is available. I mentioned earlier Felicia Dell. She and her team are leading this effort for the county as a program administrator. They certainly are experts in how to plan and run programs like this. We've established an opioid advisory board. Again, lesson learned from the recovery task force is we're not the experts in what's going on with the opioid epidemic, but there's a lot of people in our community that are. So we have a great group of individuals assembled to serve on this opioid advisory board, and they're going to be the ones that are looking at the grants and then coming to the Board of Commissioners to make those recommendations. They've all been appointed. As you can see here, they're going to provide oversight. They'll have input into the review of the grant process, and then they will ultimately make the recommendations to the Board of Commissioners on how we allocate this funding. I know there's a lot on this slide. I think the only thing I would ask you to remember is the top, www.yorkopioidfunds.com. If you go there, all this information is available. We are in the process of conducting some training sessions so we can educate folks on what is needed when they apply for these grants. I think we have 6 scheduled, and Felicia and her team are going to schedule a couple more for the end of February, beginning of March. It's really important that folks go here so they understand what's involved in applying for this funding. There's something called Exhibit E that was part of the settlement process that has some very strict and specific guidelines of what this money can be used for. So we want to make sure everyone is aware that it's out there, but also make them aware of what the funding can be used for. The plan is that we are going to roll the settlement we received last year and the one we're going to receive in the next couple months into one funding round for this year. And then going forward, there'll be an annual funding round. So this year we've got a little over $2.5 million that we are going to be able to allocate to combating the opioid epidemic right here in York County. And last but not least, we'll close on a happy note. Happy birthday. We've got a birthday coming up in 2026. Our nation will be 250 years young. But in addition, we've got some special things here in York County. We will be celebrating the 275th anniversary of York County, as well as the 250th anniversary of the Articles of Confederation. And I'm delighted to share with you that fellow Rotarian Brian Tate, Register of Wills Clerk of Orphans Court, has been appointed by the Board of Commissioners to serve on the PA Commission for the America PA 250. So I know this is a little ways out, but I want to put it on your radar that we've got a lot of good things planned to celebrate those three monumental days in our history. So with that, I think I've left enough time for some questions. Maybe. Okay. Any questions? So either I did a really good job or you want to get in your cars and get home. I don't know. Oh, Steve.
What degree do you think York County's plan for rural broadband and lower class broadband access is replicable around the Commonwealth?
I think it's very replicable. I sit on the National Association of Counties Telecommunications and Technology Committee. And through that as well as the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, we have a group of individuals who are sharing best practices across the Commonwealth so that we can learn from each other. I would say, while I'm a little bit biased, York County is definitely leading the way in this. We are way further along than the other counties in Pennsylvania. I think a lot of them were, I don't want to say scared, but it is a daunting task to tackle this, but you've got to start somewhere. And if you don't start peeling back the onion, you're never going to solve the problem. So I do think a lot of this is certainly replicable. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I did have them in like 20 font. We're not here to duplicate what's already being done by people like Comcast and Verizon. That's not our intention. And those were things that we studied when we did the feasibility study to build basically what the business plan was. We actually, one of the elements of that plan, we surveyed 110,000 telephone poles across our county just to see what was out there. So our intention is not to get in the way of those private companies that already exist. Our intention is to build out internet where they are not, right? To just enhance what they are already doing.
The subject of childcare, then has the county program increased the number of spots. And how many kids or how many families are being served now over and above what had previously been served?
You know, I don't have exact numbers to answer that question. Our goal wasn't necessarily to get more childcare facilities open. The goal of that early education program was to ensure that the people who were taking care of our children were being compensated in an appropriate manner. There was some funding that was stopped from the state. And one of the things that we did with this was to kind of close that funding gap. So that's a great question. I can probably get you the answer to that in working with Kevin. So I just don't know that off the top of my head. Yep. Yep. Oh, I would say do it. Absolutely. One of the things that I found is my skill set when it comes to critical thinking, negotiation skills, problem solving skills, how to read a P&L statement, a cash flow statement. All of those things are incredibly important in running, whether it's a county government, municipal government, state government. So I would encourage anyone who is willing to share their time as a business leader and run for public office. I think their skill sets will be put to really good use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. It is certainly enlightening to hear all of what county government's involved in, and comforting, I think, for all of us to see that our county government leader clearly has her head wrapped around the complexities of what it means to run a county in 2023. In honor of Julie's time with us today, she has signed the book plate in the book Llama Llama Red Pajama, red having nothing to do with party affiliation, I'm told, written by Anna Drudny, and it will be donated to the Lincoln Charter School. Next week, as mentioned earlier, we will be at Penn State York, where fellow Rotarian and Penn State York's Chancellor, David Christensen, will lead a team of colleagues and students to showcase 3 of Penn State York's transformative programs that focus on leadership development. Learn more about the Graham Fellows Program, the FBLA team, and the Center for Inclusive Leadership. And again, please remember to make your reservation by close of business today for next week. Our closing quote today: make your life a masterpiece. Imagine no limitations on what you can be, have, or do. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting stands adjourned.